All three of the detectives were at their respective workstations. They had recently cracked a major car theft ring operating out of the city, and an attorney for one of the suspects had derisively referred to them as Huey, Dewey, and Louie. They took the group nickname as a badge of honor. Bosch saw Lourdes peeking over a partition from her desk. He gave her a nod of thanks for the heads up. It was also a sign that so far things were okay. Bosch led the visitors into the war room. It was a soundproof room with walls lined with whiteboards and flat-screen monitors. At the center was a boardroom-style table with 8 leather chairs around it. The room was designed to be the command post for major crime investigations, task force operations, and coordinating responses to public emergencies such as earthquakes and riots. The reality was that such incidents were rare, and the room was used primarily as a lunchroom, the broad table and comfortable chairs perfect for group lunches. The room carried the distinct odor of Mexican food. The owner of Magali's Tamales up on Maclay Avenue routinely dropped off free food for the troops, and it was usually devoured in the war room. "Have a seat," Bosch said. Tapscott and Soto sat on one side of the table while Kennedy went around and sat across from them. Bosch took a chair at one end of the table, so you would have angles on all three visitors. "So, what's going on?" he said. "Well, let's properly introduce ourselves," Kennedy began. "You, of course, know Detective Soto from your work together in the Open Unsolved unit, and now you've met Detective Tapscott. They've been working with me on a review of a homicide case you handled almost 30 years ago. "Preston Borders," Bosch said. "How is Preston? Still on death row at the Q last time I checked." "He's still there." "So why are you looking at the case?" Kennedy had pulled his chair close and had his arms folded and his elbows on the table. He drumrolled the fingers of his left hand, as if deciding how to answer Bosch's question, even though it was clear that everything about this surprise visit was rehearsed. "I'm assigned to the Conviction Integrity Unit," Kennedy said. "I'm sure you've heard of it. I have used Detectives Tapscott and Soto on some of the cases I've handled because of their skill in working cold cases." Bosch knew that the CIU was new and had been put into place after he left the LAPD. Its formation was the fulfillment of a promise made during a heated election campaign in which the policing of the police was a hot-ticket debate issue. The newly elected DA, Tak Kobayashi, had promised to create a unit that would respond to the seeming groundswell of cases where new forensic technologies had led to hundreds of exonerations of people imprisoned across the country. Not only was new science leading the way, but old science, once thought to be unassailable as evidence, was being debunked and swinging open prison doors for the innocent. As soon as Kennedy mentioned his assignment, Bosch put everything together and knew what was going on. Borders, the man thought to have killed 3 women but convicted of only 1 murder, was making a final grab at freedom after nearly 30 years on death row. "You gotta be kidding me, right?" Bosch said. "Borders? Really? You are seriously looking at that case?" He looked from Kennedy to his old partner Soto. He felt totally betrayed. "Lucia," he said. "Harry," she said, "you need to listen." Chapter 2. Bosch felt like the walls of the war room were closing in on him. In his mind and in reality, he had put Borders away for good. He didn't count on the sadistic sex murderer ever getting the needle, but death row was still its own particular hell, one that was harsher than any sentence that put a man in general population. The isolation of it was what Borders deserved. He went up to San Quentin as a 26-year-old man. To Bosch, that meant 50-plus years of solitary confinement, less only if he got lucky. More inmates died of suicide than the needle on death row in California. "It's not as simple as you think," Kennedy said. "Really?" Bosch said. "Tell me why." "The obligation of the Conviction Integrity Unit is to consider all legitimate petitions that come to it. Our review process is the first stage, and that happens in-house before the cases go to the LAPD or other law enforcement. When a case meets a certain threshold of concern, we go to the next step and call in law enforcement to carry out a due diligence investigation. And of course everyone is sworn to secrecy at that point." Bosch looked at Soto as he said it. She looked away. "Absolutely," Kennedy said.